بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين نحمده حمدا دائما لا ينقطع أبدا ونصلي ونسلم على نبيه الأكرم سيد الأنبياء وخاتم المرسلين سيدنا ونبينا محمد وعلى آله الطاهرين المعصومين المنتجبين اللهم صل على محمد السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك عليك مني سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين. عظم الله أجورنا وأجوركم بمصاب أبي عبد الله الحسين وأهل بيته. Sisters and brothers, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. يقول الله تبارك وتعالى في القرآن الكريم أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ولا تكونوا كالذين نسوا الله فأنساهم أنفسهم أولئك هم الفاسقون. Surah Ashura, verse number 16. Don't be like those who forgot Allah, and in return He made them forget their own self or their own soul. And as a consequence, they become dumb, deaf, and blind. Summun, bukmun, umyun, fahum la ya'qilun. The event of Karbala, if we want to reflect on it, is a clash and confrontation between two types of human beings. One, on the one hand, we see a group of people that they manifest all values that humans should have, which is Imam Hussein salawatullah salamu alayhi and his followers. And if I want to borrow a phrase from the Quran, لَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ فِي أَحْسَنِ تَقْوِيمٍ, the best of forms. On the other, this group, Khalifatullah, and what Allah informed the angels at the beginning of the story of creation, Surah Al-Baqarah, that I know something, إِنِّي جَاعِلٌ فِي الْأَرْضِ خَلِيفَةً. And the angels responded with a statement. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, even if we were to accept that it is literal conversation between Malaika and Allah, other people, they say it's a metaphoric use of language. But Allah said that in response to their question, أَتَجْعَلُ فِيهَا مَنْ يُفْسِدُ فِيهَا وَيَسْفِكُ الدِّمَاءِ. You're going to create someone or a group of people that they are going to corrupt and bloodshed on earth. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said that إِنِّي أَعْلَمُ مَا لَا تَعْلَمُ, I know something that you don't. So on the one hand, we see the epitome of Khalifatullah, literally and metaphorically. The Imam is the Khalifatullah on earth. And those who are around him are individuals that they typify, embody the values, all the values that true human beings should have. And on the other, what I call, Quran calls, asfal al-safilin, the lowest of the low. You can't go below that level of these individuals. In Quran again uses a phrase, إنهم كالأنعام بل هم أضل سبيلا. They are lower than beasts. So it's a clash between two groups of people. Both in appearance look like, at least the other side, which typifies evil, looks like human being, but devoid of all values that humans should have. Asfal al-safilin. Now, imagine if we were to be transported now back in history to Karbala and Ashura of 61. On the plain of Karbala, on the scorching sand, one could see the headless bodies of those who the night before spent كان لهم دوي كدوي النحل ما بين راكع وساجد وقائم وقاعد. The buzz in the khayma and the tent of Imam Hussein, spending the night going through prayers and sujda, submission to Allah, etc., etc. The bodies of these individuals are left on the plain of Karbala, trampled upon, crushed by the hooves of horses. Tents of Ahlul Bayt burned, women attacked, their possessions are looted, and the bodies of these pure souls search for anything of value. We have in hadith that even the small finger of Imam Hussein was severed and taken because there was a ring on it that they wanted to take the ring. If there was a jewelry on the ear of a small child, they would rip the ear to take the jewelry. There is a hadith or a story that says Imam Hussein salawatullah wa salamu alayhi used to go to the battle and come back. There was a place close to the mukhayyam, or close to the tents, that he had considered or made that place the center of his operation, going back and forth. The place where the women in the tent could hear him. The last time that he came, immediately went to the tent and asked his sister Zainab to bring him a ragged piece of cloth. Nobody knew why, what's the rationality for a ragged dress to wear under his clothes. It appeared during the day of Ashura, on such a day like today, they ripped all the clothes. The women of Ahlul Bayt now have to search the desert of Karbala for their children that have run away and hidden under bushes and so on to protect themselves. And on the other hand, now this is the example of what we call true human being, the pure soul. And on the other hand, those who survived the battle in the army of Umar ibn Sa'd congratulated each other for a job well done. And they offered thanks to Allah for the blessing of victory. Against who? Against the grandson of the Holy Prophet. That clearly tells us something. That these people that were there, they were not kuffars or Romans or Turks that Bani Umayyah brought from somewhere else. These were people that knew who Hussein was. But on the day of Tasu'ah, if they really didn't have any Islamic value, or they didn't understand the concept of Islam, Umar ibn Sa'd would not tell them, Ya khaylallah irkabi wa bil jannati abshir. O the army of Allah, get on your horses and remember that the glad tidings of you're going to go to heaven. So narrative and wording of Islam and reward and so on is being used by Bani Umayyah against Ahlul Bayt. The Imam Sajjad, there is a hadith from Imam Sajjad that says, وَكُلٌّ, they took their swords out, وَكُلٌّ يَتَقَرَّبُونَ إِلَى اللَّهِ بِدَمِهِ. What else do you need? That Muslims, some of them Shias, that have been to Battle of Siffin with Ali, Battle of Jamal with Ali, Battle of Nahrawan with Ali, now they pull their swords, qurbatan ilallah. That's the point. They want to kill Imam Hussein, qurbatan, to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So, there is a question of why or how humans can change from this continuum of being pure, typifying and exemplifying the values of true human being, into some kind of humanoid that they do not possess any value, any moral, any ethical or humane value in their life. That's the question that we have to be concerned about. Imam Hussein, on the day of Ashura, a day like this, delivered a couple of sermons, one early in the morning, one around 10 or 11 o'clock in the morning, and then another one in the afternoon. To show that the knowledge of Ahlul Bayt, they knew who he was. This time, on the second sermon, when he wants to deliver the khutbah, asks people that are in the tent to bring few artifacts that belong to the Holy Prophet. First of all, bring him the camel of the Holy Prophet. The Holy Prophet used to have a tall camel that dominated the plain. He wanted everybody to see him. On the horse, you might not see him properly. The camel. The turban of the Holy Prophet. The attire of the Holy Prophet. The sword of the Holy Prophet. To remind them and deliver a sermon. Is there a grand, you all recognize all these attires and artifacts belonging to the Holy Prophet. Is there another grandson of the Holy Prophet alive? And if not, on what rationale and justification you are fighting here? What was the answer? Umar ibn Sa'd told them to make noises so that they don't hear Imam Hussein. And after a few times of repeating attempt, telling them to to listen, delivered the sermon. Tabban lakum ayyatuha al-jama'a. May you be cursed. وَتَرْحَى حِينَ اسْتَصْرَخْتُمُونَا وَالِهِينَ. You called us with expectation, great expectation for us to come and help you. And we responded to these calls quickly. Now that we are here, سَلَلْتُمْ عَلَيْنَا سَيْفًا لَنَا فِي أَيْمَانِكُمْ. This sword that you are holding in your hand, we gave it to you in your right hand. وَحَشَشْتُمْ عَلَيْنَا نَارًا افتدحناها على عدونا وعدوكم. This fire was supposed to be used against our enemy and your enemy. This fire, now you are using it against us, Ahlul Bayt. we really need to pause a little bit and ask a question. What happened to these human beings? Humanoid. I wouldn't call them human beings. They appear like human beings, but devoid of all the values. Some of the deeds that they did, even in Jahiliyyah time, during Jahiliyyah, that people used to worship what we call idols, they never, after the killing of a soldier, they never went with the hooves of their horses over them. But for Hussein, they did. At the end of the battle, when everything is finished, Umar ibn Sa'd commands 30 or 40 of his soldiers to do what? To go over these bodies after severing their heads. And they did it. Never in the past, although the wives and the women of the tribes used to accompany men occasionally to encourage them to go forward, once the battle was over, never any attack on women and children. But this group of Muslims, they did. So the serious question is, what makes people to sell their souls and become devoid of all human values, or moral values, ethical values? If we look at the Holy Quran, Quran responds, وَغَرَّتْهُمُ الْحَيَاةُ الدُّنْيَا وَنَسُوا اللَّهَ. The wealth, the glamour of the material life, the glamour of material life created a degree of pride and vanity that they forgot Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And once you forget Allah, you can do anything. This forgetfulness is a toxic state that ultimately leads to negation of all the values of human being, and you see nothing but yourself. And your own interest. There is a hadith, one of the close relatives of Umar ibn Sa'd, that strangely enough was in the camp of Imam Hussein. On the day of Ashura, decided to go, because of his relationship with Umar ibn Sa'd. Umar ibn Sa'd was in a tent, decided to go and visit him, to talk to him. Went in without saying salam. Umar ibn Sa'd got angry. He said, cousin, why didn't you say salam? Do you think I'm a kafir or mulhid or something? He said, you are worse. You are bringing the army to kill the grandson of the Holy Prophet, and you react because I did not say salam to you? What kind of a soul do you have? The answer is something that we can learn from. He said, I cannot let go of mulk of Ray. I must have it at any price that it is. And his cousin says, even by killing the grandson of the Holy Prophet? Even. Remember, you go back to the beginning of Saqifa, when Umar came to the house of Fatima to burn the place up, and they said that إِنَّ فِيهَا Fatima walau. Even if Fatima is there, we will burn it. You have to come out and swear allegiance. So this kind of thing has a history. Umar ibn Sa'd says, I have to have mulk of Ray, even at the expense, at the cost of killing Imam Hussein. No wonder Quran says, sometimes قساوة القلب ثم قست قلوبكم من بعد ذلك فهي كالحجارة أو أشد قسوة. That your heart becomes hardened as they are rocks, even worse than rocks, because at least through time rocks could crack and allow water to go through them, but these hearts never submit to the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is the concept of masq that we have in Islamic terminology. I know the literature that we have, or at least verses in the Holy Quran, that they talk about Bani Israel being massacred or somehow transformed. And there is a debate between the scholars whether this transformation is physical or spiritual. But certainly, when humans keep the outside exterior physical appearance but become devoid of all the spiritual and ethical and moral principle, is a classic example of massacre. Otherwise, how can we explain a person says that I cannot let go of mulk of Ray even at the expense of killing the grandson of the Holy Prophet? So what we have, غرتهم الحياة الدنيا, حب الدنيا and حب Allah clash. For those that submit to the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, وَالَّذِينَ آمَنُوا, again Quran, أَشَدُّ حُبًّا لِلَّهِ. If they have any love, compassion is for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And for the others is حُبُّ الشَّهَوَاتِ. Imam Hussein, on his way to Karbala, النَّاسُ عَبِيدُ الدُّنْيَا وَالدِّينُ لَاعِقٌ عَلَىٰ أَلْسِنَتِهِمْ. They play around with the narrative of religion. So long as deen and madhab or faith does not infringe on the personal lifestyle that they choose for themselves. We choose the lifestyle and then we start searching around to find excuses to support that lifestyle. If the faith begins to infringe on that lifestyle, we step back. Comfort zone. حب الشهوات. So we have huge amount of people within our community, and even I could be one of them, narcissists. Now, what do narcissists do? It's a unique state of mind that you only see yourself in the mirror and nothing else. By 5 p.m. today, year 61 after Hijrah, all was over. The bodies are thrown. Imam Hussein fulfilled his part, that he was going to do his part in the first phase of this uprising. Karbala uprising has 2 phases and 2 characters that play a role. From Medina up to 3 o'clock on the day of Ashura, the main champion of this period and this phase was Imam Hussein salawatullah salam. From the moment that Shimr steps in and severs the head of Imam Hussein, and the transition takes place, and the person who takes control and feels responsible to go and deliver the message to the Qasr of Imara in Sham is Zainab sallallahu alayhi wa. And she picks up like tomorrow afternoon around 12 or 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock in Kufa, she picks up from the message that Imam Hussein delivered, Tabban lakum ya ahl al-Kufa. Zainab sallallahu alayhi wa starts, Amma ba'd ya ahl al-Kufa, again, direct chastisement of people of Kufa for being nothing but treacherous, unstable, and deceitful. Do you know what you have done? Zainab is going to, she delivered her part with other women within the Ahlul Bayt. The question is, Imam Hussein salawatullah salam alayhi left us with the message. They say that on the day of Ashura, there was nobody around. Probably is among the last messages. Hal min nasirin yansurullah. Is there anyone that could stand up and support us. They say Imam is talking to the future generations to come. This message of Karbala has to be transported for as long as history goes. But who's going to take that responsibility of transporting the message? If you look at Amir al-Mu'mineen salawatullah salam alayhi in a wasiyah to Imam Hassan and Imam Hussein, says that this is a wasiyah for Hassan and Hussein and whoever receives this message, which means it's a universal. Imam Hussein, when he says that Hal min nasirin yansuruna, it's a message to everyone to come, which includes us. We have covered a huge amount of diverse topics during the past nights. We talked about imama, haqq and batil, ahdaf al-thawra, goals of uprising, judging imams based on values that they represent, amr bil-ma'ruf, nahy anil munkar, and reform, etc., etc. Particularly particularly critical for today and tonight is the ahdaf al-thawra, the goals of the uprising. And if we look at the messages of Karbala, we come across a number of them in different ahadith that we have. Imam Hussein salawatullah salam alayhi, if we collect all these sayings, sermons, short speeches and so on, close to 70 statements. If we put them together, a picture appears that there are a number of goals and objectives that are what we call universal, non-changing. These are the ones, Hal min nasirin yansuruna, it puts the obligation on the shoulder of those who are going to come in the future to look at these ahdaf, objectives, and develop a strategy and a mean that you would take it and propagate these ahdaf, or the goals. Number one, we have amr bil ma'ruf and nahy anil munkar. وإنما خرجت لطلب الإصلاح في أمة جدي رسول الله أريد أن آمر بالمعروف وأنهى عن المنكر. Number two, live free. Freedom. Don't subject yourself to the pressure of others to follow sheepishly. God has given you intellect, use it. يا شيعة آل أبي سفيان إن لم يكن لكم دين ولا تخافون المعاد فكونوا أحرارا في دنياكم كما تسألون. Live free. Rejecting any form of degradation and humiliation. هيهات من الذلة. You look at the ahadith that we have, the statements. Islah, reform of society. وإنما خرجت لطلب الإصلاح في أمة جدي رسول الله. Never to support tyranny and injustice. Again, we see this constantly in ahadith that we have in the sermons. Even a year before Muawiyah died, in a speech that Imam Hussein gave to the people of Mecca, where the scholars and everybody else is around, clearly reminded the scholars of the time their responsibility that when they see oppression and tyranny, they must stand up. Establishing proper Islam, not deformed Islam, that we pay lip service, we pray on the day of Ashura. I have always tried to understand the dichotomy that existed in this day. At the same time, one Jama'ah prayer with the leadership of Umar ibn Sa'd on the other side, and one Jama'ah prayer with the leadership of Imam Hussein on the other. And they all submitted to the command of Islam, offered prayer, recited Quran. Collective responsibility before political, social corruption in society. These goals must be clearly defined. Based on these goals, if we want to propagate properly the essence of Karbala, these goals must be clearly defined, and a strategy must be developed that would ultimately serve the delivering of these goals. Simply because a strategy worked in the past, it's not going to do much when we don't understand that the context has changed and people react differently in our society, in the West. Translating Maqtal, as we listened to it just now, fine for those who understand, primarily come from the Middle East, and they have the same language, or at least understand a little bit of Arabic and a little bit of English. But a young man, a young person in the West, their reaction to emotion, there are two components to uprising of Karbala, the intellectual part and the emotional part. Their reaction to emotion is totally different from the person that comes from the Middle East. They are totally different, they think differently and emotionally react differently. Simply translating Maqtal and reciting it for them for an hour and switching between Arabic and English, and you expect the younger generation that has no clue about Arabic in the West, and their reaction totally observed in the Western culture to react to this state. It's not going to happen. How many times we have been to meetings with our children. After 10-15 minutes, our children come to us and say, "Dad, I really don't understand anything." They are right. Why? The goal is quite clear, universal. The strategy we choose to deliver this message is not the right strategy. We may have to change. If in the past, primarily the strategy was Husseiniya and the Masajid and so on that organized the program, we may have to change the place and move somewhere else and deliver the message. Ashura now becomes a way of taking it out of what we call the box and delivering it to youngsters according to their understanding. I remember we had this discussion with Dr. Ibrahim at the house. I used to work in Colorado with interfaith people, and there was a Jewish rabbi that we got very close, about the same age as me, and almost the same background. I asked him once, "Rabbi, where is your synagogue?" He said, "I don't have a synagogue. My synagogue is on the back of my bike." The moment that they tell us or tell me there is a group of youngsters within our community congregating on such and such a place, I jump on my bike and I go to them. You take it to them. The universal message, there is a gaping need for the universal values to be established and to be taught to others. It's our responsibility to do it, but it wouldn't work with the old-fashioned style. So what we need to do is to propagate the message. We need a clear understanding of the context, the place where we are in, the kind of dynamics that we have within this place, based on both intellectual and emotional. For the children, you have to be totally different, a proper child-sensitive and child-age-appropriate tools to be developed. And books, stories, and so on. They have to understand that they feel comfortable with it. The beating of the chest may not work for the child that is 14 or 15 years old that has grown up in this society. So we need to change. Once we have successfully understood the space-time dynamics of our society, then we can search for the tools, develop the strategy. So we need first brainstorming. Let's put it this way. As a community, we sit down together before Moharram, say, okay, what is the purpose of organizing something? Simply just to recite maitam? Or no, there is a purpose for this organization to take the message to those who normally wouldn't hear it. And remember, the Shia is the minority in the middle, the greatest circle is the Sunni, and the largest circle outside are the community or the society at large. How do we transition, move from one circle to another? The strategy is not going to be the same. Even within our own society, it has to be a different strategy. Then we search for tools. Karbala becomes a confrontation between haqq and batil. I mentioned this a few nights ago. When we look at Western scholars or non-Muslims being so in love with Imam Hussein, they do what? They cite certain of these universal values. Haqq and batil. Resistance against political condition, or resistance against tyranny, the dignity of human being, etc., etc. Today, Samahat al-Sayyid Hassan Nasrullah, in a speech that he gave, this is what he said: الظلم والعذاب والقهر الذي يسود العالم لم يسبق له مثيل في تاريخ البشرية. Remember the talk about corruption on earth? We're already living in it. الجوع اليوم يمتد إلى الدول الغربية والآلاف المهاجرين اليوم يموتون في البحار وهذه من مظالم هذه العالم. It's a byproduct of the system. The question is, can Ashura, with its universal message, make a contribution here or not? If yes, how? That's the challenge. Hal min nasirin yansuruna is not just purely sitting in a small corner and repeating the same thing that has happened in the past. Yes, the emotional part we need. Nobody can say, a father holds his son, 6-month-old, and comes at the end of the day, the last person to be martyred, and presents this child to the people in front and says, if you think I have some kind of a sin or crime, what about this child? How they respond. You can't just emotionally be dead and not respond to it or react to it. That is without saying. Heart bleeds when we see these kind of incidents. When a child's earring are pulled out of her ears, or a girl's earring, and the man says, I am sorry, if I don't take it, somebody else will. إنهم كالأنعام بل هم أضل. They are lower than beasts. A society, the world that has become dysfunctional, billions of dollars for Ukraine, 73 or 74 years of bomb on the head of Palestinians, and nobody says anything. Mahram used to say, if Imam Hussein was alive today, Palestine was the Ashura, the Karbala that he would say we have to go to. Do we have a response? Do we as Shias have a role to play within our own society to correct, reform the society or not? Can we take a page from the history of Karbala and use it? but developing it properly for the sake of the society that we live in. Even not for the sake of society, for the sake of our children, that they're going to live here. This is the fundamental problem and the challenge that we have to deal with. If we want to take a message, this is the last night, we want to take a message from Karbala for all the discussion that we have had. We should take a message that we have a responsibility to take the message of Karbala and deliver it to others, so that Karbala doesn't stay buried in history of 1400 years ago. That's the way we can keep the message of Karbala alive. But we can't do it without a clear plan, understanding the goals, the universal goals, a clear strategy, and then finding the means and the tools that we can go forward and deliver. Inshallah, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us that privilege and the opportunity to be doing anything. كلكم راع وكلكم مسؤول عن رعيته. من أصبح ولم يهتم بأمور المسلمين فليس بمسلم. We have so much problem around. We can't just hide under the radar and say it's not my problem. It's everyone's problem. When you don't do it, the boomerang comes back to haunt you. Then, when your son comes in, your daughter comes in and says, Dad, there is no God. This is all fiction of your imagination. You didn't do any planning. You didn't work for it. How many times I have heard and seen these stories? Maulana, can you recite something and somehow break the spell of my son? Why? Because he says there is no God. As if I have the magic wand and I can wave it around and they become okay. Now they come out muttaqi. We don't spend time for the children. They grow up like mushrooms. There is no plan. For those of you that are not married, and quite a few of you around, start thinking from now. There should be a plan. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help us in this endeavor, and it's a challenge. We are privileged that if ever we are able to deliver the message to others, the message of Ashura to others, inshallah. Join me please in reciting Surah Amman Yujib for the benefit of those who have asked for it specifically, because they have some kind of a problem or sickness or illness. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Amman Yujib يكشف السوء أما يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف 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 السوء. اللهم إنا نسألك ونرجوك باسمك العلي الأعظم وبفاطمة وأبوها وبعلها وبنوها والسر المستودع فيها أن تفرج عنا فرجا عاجلا قريبا يا الله. اللهم اشف مرضانا ومرضى المؤمنين ومن عليهم بالشفاء والصحة. اللهم ارحم موتانا وموتى المؤمنين. اللهم سد فقرنا بغناك. اللهم غير سوء حالنا وحسن حالك وعجل في فرج مولانا صاحب الزمان بالنبي وآله. نهدي للجميع ثواب سورة الفاتحة قبلها الصلاة على محمد وآل محمد.